Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Angel. In this video, we're going to break down the Ajna chakra, which is the sixth in a 7 chakra system. So it's the last one that you hit right before you hit union, which is the 7th one, which is the tether between the heavens and the earth. With this one, you're very close to the heavens. All of these are in the body. The 7th chakra sits like above the body. So this is the last chakra that's actually inside of your physical body. And so this one relates heavily to the first, which is at your root, at the base of your spine. So let's get into it. We're going to do the same sort of format where I talk about the themes. I'm going to talk about what it looks like when it's deficient and when it's excessive and when it's balanced and how to bring it into balance. Ajna chakra. Ajna, which means third eye. The location is right in the center of the forehead, slightly above the space between the eyebrows. The element is light. The color is indigo. The sound is Om or AUM. Core themes of this are intuition, perception, inner vision, wisdom, clarity. This has to do with the right to see, and the demon of this one is illusion. And a simple way to put this, of seeing on the outside versus seeing on the inside, is the difference between just that. If you're watching me, you are seeing me without having to imagine what it is that I look like, where I am. If I ask you now to close your eyes, and you're welcome to do this exercise, try to close your eyes and then imagine a bicycle. What does that bicycle look like? What color is it? And now that bicycle is on a mountain. Now imagine the mountain. Is there snow on the mountain? Create the mountain. Are there other mountains around? And now think about a path that you can create to ride your bike down the mountain. And now you can come out of the exercise, it's finished. So there's a difference between you observing me, just seeing me, versus you creating the mountain and the bike and the going downhill. That takes effort to create, as opposed to simply seeing what's in front of you, which takes no effort because you're simply seeing it. And this has to do with seeing things that are not necessarily in 3D. This has to do with how we want to see ourselves and the effort we create to try and sustain this thing that is not necessarily true, because if it was true, you would simply see it. It wouldn't need to be created. A lot of people who are out of balance in this chakra have a version of themselves that they want you to see. They want to identify as, I want to identify as a shaman, or I want to identify as a healer. But because I'm so attached to that, I now need to get you involved. I need you to agree that I am a shaman. I need you to agree that I am a healer. And I can't simply be a shaman or be a healer, whether or not you perceive it as such. I need you to agree with the way that I've identified. And this relates to the first chakra, because the first chakra is all about grounding into who you are and trust. And if I trust who I am and trust just how I am, it is what it is. I don't need you to agree to see me in a specific way. I simply exist as I am, and you can come and go. But if I think that my survival is in danger, if you don't view me as this thing that I've identified at, and if it hurts my ego, if you don't see me the way that I see me, then there's the psychosis that happens. And this is happening a lot. I'm sure that a lot of you will be able to identify the kinds of imbalances that I'm talking about, because it's very rampant everywhere today. The spiritual psychosis, not just in the spiritual community, but also in religion. So the first chakra is all about, again, trust and groundedness and the ability to survive what is in front of you, to survive the truth of your life. If that is a difficult thing for you, if you live in poverty, you're having a difficult time, and you don't really know or trust who you are, you don't really know or cannot trust the circumstances around you, you'll jump from the bottom, which is ungrounded, you'll go straight to the top. And then you'll start to live in this fantasy land of, in the Christian faith, it's like, well, this life is just a test. And really, I'm God's chosen, I'm God's favorite. He has mansions for me in heaven. And then you start to disassociate from this world and you start to live up in this fantasy land because it feels better than having to bear the responsibility of your life and what is truthful actually in the external world. It feels better to stay in this fantasy internal world in where I'm special and I'm chosen and I'm picked and I'm God. And usually when people are clinging to identity, there's a lot of shame involved, because if they had to let go of that identity, they don't know who they are. And again, relating to the first chakra, if you trust who you are and you know that you're going to survive anything that happens, your identity can be fluid. You can change. If you were a teacher one day and then for some reason you lost your job, great. Now you can be a woodworker. And if that takes off, you do that for a decade or two, and then things change and now you become something else. And you can go on this journey without clinging too tightly to your identity. You can be in flow with life. And you can see this a lot in the spiritual community where people cling very tightly to this sort of, quote, enlightened identity. Whereas if you were balanced in this chakra, you wouldn't need to cling so tightly. You would let things flow. There would be a balance between your internal world and your external world. You would be able to be open-minded without being arrogant about it. And there would be a blend of trusting your inner knowing and your outer knowing. So now let's get into an underactive Ajna chakra, or third eye chakra. So if you are deficient in the Ajna chakra, you might doubt your intuition and always seek others' opinions before deciding. You might feel stuck in the purely logical mind and unable to dream or imagine new possibilities. You might struggle with visioning the future or making sense of deeper meaning. You might be rigid in thinking and very closed off to new perspectives. And this was me in my healing journey. I remember the first time somebody asked me if I wanted to make a vision board. I was like, no, like I've never heard of anything more ridiculous in my life. The personality type. The personality type is the practical skeptic. This person often lacks trust in their inner voice. They are constantly second-guessing themselves or needing external validation. They are overly rational, distrustful of intuition. They may come across as very dismissive or controlling because uncertainty feels very unsafe. They're generally not open to trying anything new, especially in the spiritual realm. This is the person that when you invite them into anything new, they have a reason not to, whether it's their religion that's not allowing them to, or that, vision boarding is ridiculous, or meditation is ridiculous, or I'm already fine, I don't need any of that. Another personality type is the logical thinker. This person relies very heavily on logic and the external world. They often doubt their own inner knowing. Even if they hear a still small voice, they will override it if it will make them look bad in the external world. So even if I have this feeling of like, this job is killing my soul, I'm not going to listen to it because it looks better in the external world for me to keep this job than it is to have to say, my soul wanted me to do something else. This person might avoid imagination or intuition altogether. It can come across as rigid, overly rational, and closed to a deeper meaning of life. Every magical thing is written off as coincidence. They believe there is one right way, and it's everything that you can see with your eyes and nothing else. They are only interested in what can be proven. Psychologically, this can look like very rigid rationalism, cynicism, or they fear being wrong. They have their whole external life perfectly done, but because they dismiss spirituality, they dismiss anything deeper, this is the person that will have their whole life set, but they struggle to find a sense of fulfillment or deeper meaning or purpose in life. In relationships, they may appear emotionally unavailable or overly critical because they rely on facts instead of empathy or vision. I think we can all envision this personality type. It's the typical person that has followed along with everything that I think society expects from you. Society expects that you hit certain bars and you keep going, and then there's the midlife crisis that hits where you realize that your external world looks great, but internally there are issues with your relationships, there's issues with your marriage, there's issues with your job, And then you start to chase this thing that you actually don't know what it is. So you continue to chase like the fancy car or a bigger house because you're still chasing externally versus understanding that there is an internal state that you can be in where nothing externally needs to change, but you can find that sense of fulfillment and purpose. And now let's go into the overactive third eye chakra. These people are highly entertaining, but very dangerous. So when excessive, you might experience hallucinations, obsessions, and difficulty concentrating. These people get lost in fantasy, conspiracy thinking, or spiritual bypassing. They have a lot of difficulty distinguishing between reality and projection. They overanalyze or obsessively decode life, but it leaves them disconnected from what is actually happening. They like to come across as all-knowing while being dismissive of others' experiences or detached. They are prone to escapism. They may be very critical of those who, quote, don't get it, possibly displaying traits of grandiosity or paranoia. I bet you know someone like this. So an overactive Ajna chakra personality type. The detached mystic. They may come across as overly abstract, lost in fantasy, or convinced of hidden meanings in everything, and others see them as overly woo-woo or paranoid. There's an overemphasis on intuition, and this person can become very obsessive about visions and symbols and hidden meanings to the point that they lose grounding and touch with reality. They usually have past lives in which they were always a goddess or a king. You never speak to these people and they're like, yes, I was a peasant and I was executed, or I died of typhoid on the Oregon Trail. It's always something very grandiose. As they experience these grandiose states of being, they think that these are truths that other people simply cannot see. And psychologically, this shows up as delusional thinking, inflated egos, thinking that you have answers and that others just, quote, can't see, or they're not quite there yet. They're not on, quote, your level. They may seem brilliant, but somehow also very rigid. They're critical of others or unwilling to accept other perspectives. This is the person that you run into them and you ask, oh, what do you do? What's your job? And they sort of go, oh my God, a job. Wow. Like, oh, you're still in the 9 to 5. And then they'll laugh at you for being like stuck in a job mindset. All the while they're completely detached from reality, not paying their own rent, but in their mind, they're about to open a spiritual retreat in Peru. They generally will have, again, these visions of grandiosity really tied to this identity that they want you to believe in, but the grounded chakra, the being here on earth, the paying their own rent, they'll struggle with. But then they'll say, you know, well, the lizard people made it hard for me to leave because the Schumann resonance was coming through, and it was like giving me a headache, so I couldn't leave. And now I don't have enough money to pay my rent, but it's this person's fault for thinking that I have to pay for my existence. And it's a whole mess of things. It's the grandiosity, the complete detachment from reality, the sort of mocking you for being in a quote 2D relationship with the world, when they're in a 3D relationship or a 5D relationship with the world. But there is a distinct inability to take care of themselves. Another one of these personality types is the light and love person. And again, this comes from an inability to actually be yourself, to be all parts of yourself. You think that you're exclusively light and love. They create a pretend archetype and maybe give themselves a new name, and then they cling to this, quote, enlightened version of themselves. In relationships, they'll be controlling through being advanced. So saying things like, well, I see the truth and you're just not there with me. Or these are the non-monogamy people who try to force you into polygamy by being like, this is a type of love that you just don't understand. And maybe you're not as enlightened as I am because I can love multiple people at once. And if you would like to be as enlightened as me, I need you to open up the relationship. And they'll say that this is the best path for both of you. But again, it's controlling because they prefer to stay in this state of fantasy versus understanding that maybe they're not emotionally intelligent enough to be in a real grounded relationship. And I'm not saying anything about monogamy or polygamy, but I think this is an archetype that a lot of us can recognize. And the final personality type is the withdrawn mystic. somebody who removes themselves from everyday life. They live off of the charity of other people, and they prefer to live in a fantasy state up in their head, because that is easier and feels better than having to live in a shared reality that is much more complex, in which they are not the hero. The shared thing between both of them, both the overactive and the underactive, is the need to control. So the underactive person needs to control by not acknowledging. So there's nothing true that I can't see with my own eyes. And then the person who is overactive thinks like, well, I know more truth than you, but this is how this truth is, and this is how it should go. So there, in both cases, is this sense of control of quote, the truth, but both of them have the inability to see reality in a more macro way. And now let's bring into balance. Let's talk about a balanced third eye chakra. When in balance, this person trusts their intuition and can distinguish between inner truth and outer noise. They see life with clarity and can connect the dots between patterns and deeper meaning. They balance logic and imagination. They are practical and visionary. They're open to new perspectives, but grounded enough to not be swept into delusion. The personality type is more of a visionary guide, somebody who can hold both rational thinking and intuitive knowing. They're often creative, insightful, and inspiring to others. Most of us are partially awakened and partially psychic, and your dreams can create your visions, but there is a need to shed identity as you are constantly in the state of transformation. And to accomplish a big vision, there is this need to constantly shed who you are, to take in new information, whether it's woo-woo information or whether it's grounding information, and to allow that to seep into who you are. And because this is the last chakra before you meet with the divine, it is very important for you to balance, again, from the ground up, having to bring all these chakras into balance. So by the time you get here, you can see clearly who you are without feeling shame, without clinging so tightly to the perception of who you are that there's not room for anything else to grow. Another personality type is the insightful guide, somebody who has a very calm mind and they can clearly have a plan without needing to play a character. So I can have a plan without being like, I'm the guy with the plan, I'm the hero, I'm the king, I'm the goddess, and that's why you should listen to me. It's simply, here's a plan that I feel works best. Do we want to try it out? And then acting in accordance with what serves best for both worlds, the spiritual realm and this earthly realm. So for example, spiritually, in the spiritual realm, forgiveness is a very worthy task. However, if someone is still in their first chakra and there's still a lot of wounds, it would be very cruel as a spiritual person, as a self-identified spiritual person, to come in and tell somebody, well, you need to forgive the person who hurt you. That's very bad and cruel and damaging advice to somebody who hasn't made it all the way up through to the space where forgiveness is a valuable thing. So if you are this person with a balanced Ajna chakra, you can see that forgiveness is a worthy thing to do and see that this person is not ready to do it. So the thing that you might pick to do that would balance both worlds is to listen to this person who is not ready for forgiveness yet. Ask them questions, listen to their story without trying to nudge them towards anything. And simply by giving them the space to be where they are, as they ascend the ladder and as they go through these stages of development, when they're ready for the spiritual practice of forgiveness, then maybe you're there to be their teacher. And maybe not, but the idea of doing the thing that is best for both worlds requires that you don't come in identifying, I am a teacher, I'm a spiritual teacher, and forgiveness is good, and clinging to that so tightly that you come in and you actually cause harm to somebody who is not in that stage yet. The person who is balanced has a strong sense of inner vision while staying grounded in reality. They can see many patterns in life, and because of this, they can connect the dots that others sometimes miss without slipping into paranoia or fantasy. They are intuitive, imaginative, and reflective, but also practical enough to translate insights into action. So I'm sure if you've ever spoken to somebody who is incredibly self-identified as spiritual, they make things very complicated. True spiritual teachers make things simple. If you're talking to somebody who only has insights but can't help you implement, they're probably not as enlightened as they think they are. People who are balanced will never consider themselves to be, quote, above you. They understand that there are places that you can go when you have a spiritual practice, but each new place that you unlock in the spiritual practice always just unlocks you. It never makes you feel better than other people. It's a simple expansion of your personal being. How to bring into balance. So how to bring into balance if you're underactive. Strengthen your intuition with small daily practices, pulling a tarot card, dream journaling, try visualization and meditation. Search for deeper patterns and notice patterns in nature. Try visualization exercises, imagine your goals, or do light meditations. Limit your sensory overload. Create moments of silence, stillness, and inward reflection. Do breath work. Practice trust by acting on small intuitive nudges and observing your outcome. How to bring into balance if excessive. Learn to bear all the practical responsibilities of your life. Ground your vision with embodied practices, lift weights, go on long walks, spend time in nature, and engage in something that is physically challenging. Journal or discuss intuitive insights to test them against what actually happens in the real world. Practice mindfulness to stay present in this moment. Notice when you are slipping into fantasy worlds to give confirmation bias on something in the real world. Focus on staying healthy, eat well, and rest well. The third eye thrives on clarity. So the third eye is where we learn to trust ourselves and to see wisdom and ground it into reality. It's where there is not that much effort. There is simply a seeing of what is true, an acceptance of it. There is a quote that I really like that says, hold things but not too tightly. And I feel like that encapsulates the third chakra very well. Where you can hold things. I can hold that I'm a teacher without needing to pursue you to make sure that you believe that I'm a teacher. And I can hold that there is a spiritual realm without clinging to this idea that I must know about it. I cannot know all about it. There is a surrender involved in this chakra where you need to be in the flow of what is happening. Enjoy this version of you without worrying about what has been past and without worrying about what is coming. To stay in balance, you do all the things. You do the meditation, you do the journaling, you remind yourself that it's perfect here. There is no need for shame for past versions of you, and there's no need for illusion for what you hope to be in the future. This is it. You are being, and just like seeing something is easy, being yourself is easy, and being yourself without shame, which then allows you to be fully here as yourself, fully present, and ready to get to the seventh chakra where you meet with the divine. I hope this was helpful, and it is again meant to be a fun way for you to understand all the things that happen in real life, all the stuff that we have to get through. And if you recognize yourself in the imbalanced under and in the over, again, that's fine. But there are practices to bring into balance, and there is a way to be here without shame. When my therapist first told me that I could revisit a memory, like a bad memory, without the charge, without feeling the shame or the burden or whatever it was, I thought he was lying, because I was in this mindset of being so clinging to what was true for me and what I saw externally. I didn't believe that there was actually a way to heal. And, that was 7 years ago. So 7 years down the line, I have been able to revisit not just memories, but actually physical places where terrible things happened, and to not only not feel the bad things, but to feel a sense of joy and wonder at this journey, because it is a wonderful and perfect journey. And I hope that as you learn about these chakras and as you are carrying yourself through this journey, that you honor that and you understand that you are doing a wonderful thing for yourself. So there is one more step in this journey, the seventh chakra, which we'll talk about next time. I'll see you then.